Welcome back, everybody, to Nuts and Bolts Sports. We are here discussing the NBA's return. This is episode 4. I am Raj Sani. Joining me today, Joe and Nick. Say hi, guys.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on, man? Nick Andre here, man. Had to be a part of the show.
Yeah, as you know, Joe is obviously the founder of Nuts and Bolts Sports. Nick Andre is one of our new team writers, and we're really excited to get into the NBA here today. Unfortunately, Jordan is not joining us, but that's okay because we have a great team, and not a whole lot on the news front to discuss, but we obviously have sort of a one pretty big story bubbling up here before we get into sort of your guys' thoughts on what's going down in the bubble. Ben Simmons going out with injury, leg injury, and it doesn't seem all that severe right now. There's some swelling, but a lot of the tests came back negative. Doesn't seem like a lot of people within the organization are too worried. That said, I've heard that I've sort of heard, from, I believe it was Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer and a couple other tweets that I read online saying that this injury has kept people out of play up to like 8 weeks. This could be anywhere from he could sit out just a couple games to he could be out the rest of the season. We really don't know what it's going to look like. So Joe, I'll toss it to you first. What are your thoughts on this Simmons injury and what you think is going to happen to Philly?
Ooh, this is bad, man. Anytime you have an injury, it's bad. But, when you're fighting for a playoff spot, and we all know, we won't get into detail about the preseason expectations a lot of us had for the Philadelphia 76ers. You take a look at that roster. So to lose Ben Simmons now when it's almost playoff time, and like you said, an injury that has the potential to keep you out for 8 weeks, this is tough. So, I think that it's a big loss for the 76ers. But if you take a look at the stats and you're an analytics kind of guy, Joel Embiid has thrived when Ben Simmons is not playing. So I think this is a chance for a Joel Embiid. An Al Horford's been bashed all season about being a bust. This is a chance for those two guys to really step up, and along with Tobias Harris and the whole team as a whole, to show what they really have. So we'll find out. It's a huge loss for Philadelphia. Obviously, you want Ben Simmons lining up on your team and playing with you, but I think they still have a chance to do some damage because Embiid's been feasting anyway.
Yeah, what about you, Nick?
Yeah, Joe kind of pretty much hit the point on everything. Losing Ben Simmons is like a huge loss for Philly, especially, with the year that they've had, and they're trying to really bounce back going into the bubble. And they've had some pretty like good and bad stretches in their first how many games they played, like maybe 3 or 4 games already.
Yeah,
since they got into the bubble. So yeah, just losing Ben Simmons is a huge loss. Just him and Joel Embiid together, they really takes that team up to another level. Obviously, it hasn't showed this year, but everybody knows that Philly could be a dangerous team going into the playoffs, regardless of like what seed they really are, honestly. But also, just looking at this whole situation, depending on how long he's out, like it gives other players a chance to like really step up, like Shake Milton, who's like played well for them. Hopefully, Tobias Harris can possibly keep going. Josh Richardson, freaking Korkmaz. It gives a lot of guys a better opportunity to really step up, with the loss of Simmons. Obviously, nobody could take that guy's place as far as being the floor general of the team, but it gives guys another opportunity to like really thrive as players.
You hit the nail right on the head there when you said Ben Simmons being the floor general, and I continued to make this statement public, and I don't know why I continue to embarrass myself with it, but I had Philly like in my 1 or 2 in the Eastern Conference coming into this season. I just had so much confidence in that team with them picking up Al Horford, especially he had a good season in Boston. He's just such an important piece of that team. I thought they had some depth. They got a few good young guys like Tybalt coming in there. They stacked up this offseason. I thought they looked good coming into the season, and then they've just once again dropped the ball, and I'm extremely disappointed in them. And why I say you hit the head or nail on the head there with Ben Simmons being the floor general is I feel like this team is going to just lose even more consistency now. I know that Embiid and Simmons are not necessarily the best players to gel with one another, but those are two potential MVP caliber players. If they're sort of playing at their A game, those guys are in the top 10. Both of them have the potential to be there. I'm very, very concerned about this injury, if I'm being completely honest with you, especially because Embiid has not been healthy this season either. Kevin Wood said in the comments, 76ers best 2 players are injury prone. That's just another concern. Is Embiid going to stay healthy now? Like, I don't want to we obviously never want to see anybody go down with injury, but is Embiid even at 100% right now? Like, I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that at all?
I personally to me, Embiid's obviously I kind of go back and forth. I think he's either 1 or 2. Like you can go between like Jokic or him as like 2 of the best bigs in the game.
Yeah.
But honestly, you would hope that Ben Simmons stays healthy, but also I need to get more assertiveness out of Joel Embiid, on a nightly basis, because I mean he'll have games where he's the most dominant on the floor, but then he'll also have a game where he's just like he looks out of shape, he looks like he's not engaged into the game. So with Ben Simmons being absent, he's going to really have to take that next step. I mean, he obviously should have anyway, just being the all-star that he is, but he's really going to have to turn it up a notch. Mm-hmm. And if Philly, I mean, depending on how long he's out, if Philly wants to really succeed in the playoffs without Simmons, it's going to be definitely up to Joel Embiid to really step it up.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for Joel Embiid. It's going to fall either one of two ways. Either he's going to be a hero, he's going to lead this team as far as he can in the playoffs, or the nagging injuries, the being winded in the third quarter or whatever have you is going to add on to this narrative of this guy as a tease. He's just not good enough to get over the hump and get things done. And I'm sure just like I've been reading and seeing, you guys have been seeing as well, the rumblings about the potential of this team possibly getting broken up this summer if things don't work out well. So I think if Joel Embiid has a less than stellar performance, you could see him, or maybe it will be Simmons. If it was up to me, I'm the GM, I'm moving Embiid before I move Simmons. I think Simmons is a rare talent. 6 to 10 point guards don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
But I think Joel Embiid has a good opportunity to really make a name for himself, kind of show the haters and the doubters what he's really about, or we'll just say we're not really surprised, just Joel Embiid being Joel Embiid, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. You go for it.
Yeah. I kind of want to touch on that. Like you talk about, like move Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. In my opinion, like I don't feel like they're the problem. I want to know, how do y'all feel about Brett Brown?
Yeah, Brett Brown. I know a lot of Philly fans do not like Brett Brown, and I actually think that he's a solid coach. But the fact that he hasn't been able to figure it out with these two guys, despite whether Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, whether play styles are going to clash or whatever, I feel like a good enough coach would be able to figure it out with those two.
Yeah, I would agree. Not a big fan of his. I think that he's a guy that has a lot of talent. I'm not necessarily sure if he's using the talent in that roster the correct way. Yeah. Like I wonder if you put insert coach name, you put Quinn Snyder in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Are they playing the same kind of way? Mm-hmm. If you put Stevens in there, if you put Rick Carlisle in Philadelphia, I don't see them having the same results. So I think a lot of it is on Brett Brown. Now, if you're asking me who should go, the players or the coach, I'm going to say the coach. But I'm not sure what the 76ers have planned.
Yeah, and what you say about like the trade happening this offseason, I could very well see Brett Brown getting fired and a trade happening, basically blowing it up entirely and building around one particular piece. And I actually do see that piece being Simmons, just because if I had to take one of the two, I would probably take Simmons, if I'm being completely honest with you, just because going back to the whole floor general thing, I think that is such a crucial piece in today's game of basketball to have him. And if he does work in that shot, he could be one of the most lethal players in the league. But I also think that Joel Embiid's market value would be extremely, extremely high. So, you start fresh, but you start with a lot of good assets coming in if you're using Embiid. I just think Embiid has a little bit more market value. I think he has a little bit more cachet than Simmons, even though Simmons to me is the better piece for Philly to move forward with. So, that's just kind of what I got. But let's kind of get into, since like we didn't have a lot of news here, a lot of this sort of started with some Twitter back and forth and whatnot, into some conversations, some things that we wanted to get into. And you guys, this is your first time coming on this particular show on Nuts and Bolts. So I definitely want to get your thoughts on what's been going down in the bubble. Are there any teams that standing out to you? Any players that are disappointing you, possibly? Any moments, any highlight moments you want to talk about? TJ Warren's crazy performances. But Nick, I'm going to toss it to you first, because I know there's definitely something you've been itching to talk about a little bit.
Oh yeah. But first, let me go between the surprising and disappointing teams. For me, the most surprising team has to be, the dead obvious, the Phoenix Suns. Like I don't think anyone expected them to come in and just dominate the way they have. Devin Booker's looked great. Not only Devin Booker, but you got Ayton, who's kind of still emerging as an all-star big, but is getting there. And then you got other guys, and Kaminsky, I believe, is that his name?
Mm-hmm. Frank Kaminsky.
I can remember. Yeah, Frank Kaminsky and all these other guys, Mikal Bridges, like pretty much stepping up. You got to tip your hat off to Monty Williams for really getting this team in a great direction. To start the season, they started out pretty well, but then once Ayton got suspended for those 25 games, that kind of what really kind of held them back. But since they've gotten into this bubble, man, they've been playing exceptional basketball. Booker hitting that game winner, and then they also beat Indiana last night or the night before. I can't exactly remember off the top of my head, but. Yeah, man, they've been playing well. And as far as disappointing team, I'm going to have to go with the Los Angeles Lakers. I know a lot of people may not like me saying that. But, yeah, they locked up the first seed. But to me, I don't know, man. It's just not looking right for me throughout these 5 games that they've played. Obviously, LeBron hasn't really gotten to the groove that he wanted to. Anthony Davis has been rather inconsistent. And then also, I mean, Rondo's absence has been really a big factor, especially, without a floor general besides LeBron being on the floor. And then also, Frank Vogel still trying to fit in Deion Waiters and J.R. Smith, trying to get those guys going. So, I mean, it's just really looked like a wreck for the Lakers. I mean, obviously, a team with LeBron, I mean, they're obviously going to be become better once the playoffs arrive. But I think, as a for Laker fans and for people who expected them to win a championship this year, I think you have to be a little bit concerned. Not saying that they can't turn it around, but just looking at it these first few games, it's kind of been a disaster to say the least.
Yeah, I'd say for myself, start with disappointment. I'd say for me, even though they won today, Memphis Grizzlies. I had a lot of hope for this team. I get the whole narrative of they're young, they gotta earn their stripes. Man, these guys, when you think about John Morant, you think about Jaren Jackson Jr., what they had, other pieces around there as well, Dylan Brooks. I thought this team would come in and solidify themselves as the 8th seed in the West, and it's been anything but that. I mean, you figure about that first game against New Orleans, just been flat. I mean, today was the Memphis Grizzlies I've been expected to watch from the beginning of this whole bubble experiment. So even with today's victory, I'd say for me the most disappointing team has been the Grizzlies, and I'm with Nick. I think right behind them is the Lakers. I get the whole playoffs come, we flip the switch. I've heard that a lot. Very rarely has it actually happened with a lot of teams in any sport, not just the NBA. So I don't know, man. I think that there's a lot of things for them to work out. They still have games left to get things corrected. And I know the loss of Avery Bradley is big. It's glaring. The loss of Rajon Rondo is big. But I expect a little bit more from the Lakers. My most disappointing team would definitely have to be the Memphis Grizzlies. And as far as most impressive, Phoenix is an obvious answer, but I'm going to go, even though they're not undefeated, I'm going to go with the Miami Heat, man. Just the way these guys compete. You take a look at that roster. Yes, they have Jimmy Butler, but you're relying on Nunn. You're relying on Tyler Hero. You're relying on Duncan Robinson. These are household names. These guys are competing in every single game. Even the games without Jimmy Butler playing, they were competitive. They're getting punched in the mouth, but they're fighting back. And I know I saw that Nunn left the bubble for a reason today. Hopefully he'll be back in time for the playoffs. But I think for me, the most impressive team besides the Phoenix Suns has been the Miami Heat for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to hone in on a couple things and sort of lump both of your guys' answers together in the reference of the Suns and the Grizzlies, because the Grizzlies are obviously the team that is in that 8 seed and are kind of trying to fight to secure that, or were trying to fight to secure that spot. And since today was the first game that they won in the bubble, they started 0-4, whereas Phoenix started 4-0, and it's just made that race in the Western Conference playoffs for that sort of play-in tournament and for that final seeding spot in the rankings. It's just made it all the more competitive, and the Grizzlies in particular, the Jaren Jackson Jr. injury is terrible. It's brutal to see him go down with the torn meniscus. He could be out for an entire year. We don't know. I hope that he does come back the player that he was, because he's just incredible. But they were not winning games when he was on the court. That's the fact of the matter, is they still were 0-2, and they were down in that half game when he went out with the injury, if I'm not mistaken. So the Grizzlies just did not show up, and I would attribute that, I guess, to inexperience. And what's interesting, I guess, about the Suns is they're not necessarily a much more experienced team. Aiden, you make the reference of him not playing the first section of this season, still being pretty young, but he is very much living up to that sort of hype that he can, being the first draft pick. There's a lot of pressure on you, and I don't know if he necessarily lived up to that in most of his first season. But now he is definitely showing the potential, and obviously Devin Booker being, I've continued to doubt Devin Booker, and he continues to prove me wrong, and I'm glad that he does, because I'm glad to see him succeeding. But yeah, with the game winners against the Clippers and whatnot, he's just been absolutely stellar here. I'll reference the Lakers a little bit, and me being the resident Cavs fan, the only Cavs fan in the world, having witnessed a lot of LeBron late season stretches and whatnot, I'm not so worried about the Lakers from a LeBron perspective. I've talked about it before here. LeBron has not been the player that we know him to be. He's been very inconsistent. He's been indecisive. He's taking games off now with groin pain or whatever. My biggest concern is the points that you guys mentioned, is the sort of surrounding pieces around him. Anthony Davis is going to show up. He's going to show up once he gets all the pieces together. It's the wings, the Avery Bradley and Rajon Rondo both not being there. That's obviously cause some consistency issues with that team, but also Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith don't ever help your consistency. Dion Waiters had one of the craziest first games of the bubble and has completely dropped off the face of the earth since. J.R. Smith not getting the minutes. Alex Caruso is not playing all that well either, if I'm being completely honest with you. I've been really impressed with him this season, but he's not showing up here. That Lakers team, I'm not worried about them because I'm confident that LeBron and AD will be able to turn it on in the playoffs. But I can understand why people are talking about them. But I guess to me, the biggest thing is like, I feel like we always get to a stretch in the season, and oftentimes it is sort of in the later stretch of the season where we are talking about LeBron, and it's like, is he washed up now? Is he washed up now? And then he's going to come and show us all up. So I'm just waiting for that moment. But I think everybody that is talking about him is justified in what they're saying, and he does need to like turn it on and really get the ball rolling. But let's kind of use that to sort of transition into players. And Nick, this is actually specifically where I knew you had something you want to talk about. So let's get into it now then.
All right, man. I honestly kind of touched on this on my podcast. Shout out to Above the Rim, but yeah, I'll go through it again. My tweet that I put out Tuesday, I believe, I said I had a lot to say about Zion because I've been kind of going back and forth. Their first game against Utah, I kind of saw, he played 15 minutes. Frank Vogel obviously benched him, during the key stretch of the fourth quarter, and I was honestly ticked off because I'm like, yo, you need this guy in. This is your 20-year-old star. And you need him in the game, especially in this particular situation that they're in now, because they're trying to fight for a playoff position. So you need your best five in the game, and in the most important stretches of the game. So I'm looking at that, and I know you look at Zion on the bench, he's pissed off. Obviously the rest of the NBA fans, they're ticked off about it. So yeah, I mean, I was looking at it from that perspective, and I was like, man, like I don't know what the hell Alvin Gentry's doing. So fast forward to Monday, they play the Grizzlies. And, I think Zion played around like maybe 20, 25 minutes. I can't exactly remember exactly how many minutes he played.
I think it was closer to 20, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah. And I was like, okay, finally he's getting some minutes. He's finally getting some minutes. But then I'm watching him, this like maybe third quarter or so. I'm watching him, one possession, dominate the glass, do this and that, this and this and that. And then maybe like a few minutes later, I'm seeing him struggle to get down the floor. You know what I mean? He's struggling to like really get back on defense. He's struggling to get back on the floor. So I think after that play, Alvin Gentry took him out. So my hate was on my frustration was on Alvin Gentry, but I think now after that game, I kind of understood. And my message to Zion, which I doubt he'll ever hear me, but my message to Zion is like, I think Zion has to be more of a professional when it comes to this, because I mean, obviously everybody knows that Zion had left the bubble for a family emergency. I don't think anyone really knows how serious the emergency was. Hopefully nothing bad happened, but I think, Zion has to understand, what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, while you're out of the bubble, you have to understand, like, okay, when I get back, it's going to be like probably a few days before the season starts. I'm not going to have much practice time. My team really needs me to be 100% while I'm out there on the floor. So I'm not sure, if he has access to a court while he was outside the bubble or anything, but you have to find different ways to stay ready, whether it's, go out for a jog, do a little bit of cardio, just find a way for yourself to keep your body in the best shape possible, especially for your team to get a playoff spot, because in the 19, 20 games that Zion played before the season was suspended, they were actually creeping up there at Memphis for that A spot. You know what I'm saying? And that was all pretty much thanks to Zion. I mean, I know Brandon Ingram's had a great year, Drew Holiday and those guys, but Zion was really what really turned around that team season, because, I mean, they were struggling. Nobody really looked at them as a playoff team. And then when Zion shows up, I mean, they turn into a whole different team. Mm-hmm. So Zion has to understand that, and hopefully there's guys around him in that locker room that are trying to tell him, like, yo, like, stay ready. Like, keep yourself active, keep yourself in shape, because we really need you, especially trying to land this A spot. So, I mean, that's just really my message to Zion, man. I mean, like, I love Zion. I really hope that he has a very, very successful career. But I think, as his career continues, he's going to have to understand, he's going to have to, like, really make those small adjustments if he wants to, like, really have a successful career, because, I mean, you can't be, like, ticked off that your coach is taking you out but then you're running up and down the court. You're huffing and puffing, like gasping for air. But I mean, that's really my thing on the whole Zion situation.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Zion, Joe?
Look, the kid's not healthy, man. He needs to get. He doesn't seem like he's healthy, and he's definitely not in shape. I mean, the first thing Nick said, he's your 20-year-old superstar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 20 anymore, but when I was 20, I could play basketball from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's having a hard time getting up, and I know obviously street ball is nowhere near the level of NBA, but still, come on, man. He's 20 years old. You got guys that are in their 30s, i.e., LeBron James, that seem to be able to run into the cows come home, not getting tired at all. Just needs to get himself in shape. And I think whether it's New Orleans shutting him down, yes, I'm sure they got a lot of pressure from the league. This guy is the next big thing. He is your franchise. Fans want to see the Zion dunks. They want to see the Zion from Duke. He just doesn't have it this year, man. He's not in shape. If I was in charge of the Pelicans, we'd shut him down. Let's let him have whatever offseason we have to get in shape, to rest, work on the cardio. He's lost on D all the time, having no idea where he's supposed to be on defense, which is the exact opposite of what we saw in Duke. So I just think overall he's just not in shape, he's not NBA ready.
Yeah. Is there any concern, you guys talk about his health specifically, and a lot of that I would think would be attributed to the injury problems and him not being able to properly condition and properly get himself into working shape. But, there was the reports that came out earlier this week about, the scouts saying that he looks worse now than he did in the off season and whatnot. Is there any concern that this leg injury that has been nagging him for, who knows, over a year now, whenever it happened in college, that sort of consistently, pop back up and whatever? Is there any concern that this could have like long-term career impact? Knock on wood, it doesn't, but like, does that scare either of you guys? Because I know Jordan and I were talking about this on last episode, that the way that Zion plays, he's just body, bounce off people, get hit, attack the rim, high impact dunk, slams into the ground. That, that's not good for his health. And that's his play style. He's got to make adjustments, and I don't know if he's willing to make those adjustments. I don't know if he's able to make those adjustments right now because of his health, and I think it could have very, very drastic impact on his career, longstanding.
It's crazy, man. I honestly didn't even think about it like that. I mean, obviously, I don't really look back at the injuries, but I mean, I guess it can have some wear on his physical condition and him trying to get into the best of shape. Mm-hmm. But it's just crazy, man, because I mean Zion's a big freaking nature, man. Like Zion loves the bang. You know what I'm saying? And I'm a fan of it, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's exciting,
thing,
yeah.
But I think as his career goes on, I mean, hopefully the injury doesn't get any worse. But I think just further on his career, he's gonna have to find different ways to really play, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to bang under the basket all the time. The game is really revolutionized to, where big men are really stepping out at the 3-point line more than ever. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's really all about finding those ways to really finding a way to really be aggressive on the court, but not having to really bang under the basket as much as he does. Because I mean, I love Zion. I really hope he has a very successful career going forward with New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So I think as his career goes on, he will find different attributes to add to his game that'll possibly benefit, his injury history and the rest of his career.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that Zion Williamson needs to have a Kevin Love type body transformation. We need to leave the beignets and the gumbo alone and keto diet it up, brother. We need to lose some weight. We need to hit the gym with the running and the jogging. We know he's strong as an ox. You're not going to lift more weights. It's all about just getting slim, working on your cardio. And like Nick said, he's going to have to adjust his game. He's going to have to really develop a consistent jump shot. His 3-point shot's not horrible, like everybody else in the NBA. His 3-point shot just has to get better. And I think that will open up his game even more. He gets a consistent jumper or a consistent three. Now when you make that head fake at the 3-point line, you're a threat. People are going to go for that. And once he gets through the lane and rises up, there's probably nobody in the NBA that's going to try to challenge this kid. He's a monster when he gets to the basket.
Yeah, the player that Jordan and I most likened him to, in terms of the evolution that we think he needs to make and the steps that he needs to take, is Blake Griffin. Because Blake Griffin obviously had those sort of major injuries earlier on in his career. Wasn't necessarily like a big, bulky guy like Zion, but he did have a bit of a body transformation and developed his game. He developed the 3-point shot, like you said. He became a very good playmaker out of the high post and whatnot. He very much changed his game, and I think that that's actually what made Blake Griffin like the sort of elite player that he was, especially in those years when LA was contending for titles and with the Clippers, I thought that was sort of, that's the potential that Zion Williamson has, and a step up, because I think Zion Williamson is a far more skilled player than Blake Griffin was coming out of college. So that's I think the best that we can hope for of that situation. Obviously, we want him to be as good of health as he can be, because he's good for the game, obviously, but like, the potential of somebody of his age to come into the league, have such a burden on his shoulders, and then like achieve that potential when he's on the court and when he is healthy. That's exciting to see, because we haven't seen a lot of that, of these guys that are coming into the league with the pressure, like somebody like a John Wall, who's fine, he's solid, but like, he has the injury problems, he didn't quite live up to the hype. Zion here, although it's a small sample size, has lived up to the hype, but he's got to stay healthy. He just really, really has to stay healthy, and I'm concerned, but I am hoping for the best. I'll sort of like, let's sort of close things out. Are there any things else from the bubble that you want to touch on? And Joe, I'll toss it to you, whether it be, a standout game, maybe a team, another player that we haven't discussed, a moment, anything at all, really.
Well, I mean, I'm the resident Damian Lillard stan, so I have to say Dame Dollars is putting it up, man. I mean, he said, I packed enough clothes for the full 3 months. Yeah. He's going to drag, pull, carry the Portland Trailblazers to the playoffs if it's the last thing he does. So I think as far as the player that's been outstanding has been Damian Lillard. And then obviously, too, I want to touch on, man, kudos to the league. I don't know how it is in the bubble, because obviously we're not there. But just as a fan watching these games at home, I have to remind myself, usually like in the third or fourth quarter, that there are no fans. Yeah. From the camera to the commentary to the audio, people, oh my God, they're going to pump in fake crowd noise. It's horrible. I forget. I mean, you hear when it's a home game, I'm hearing Laker chants. I'm hearing Philadelphia 76ers chants, the video boards, even the virtual fans. It's kind of weird at first, but it's also kind of fun. So, I mean, kudos to the league putting this together, man, to have 0 positive cases in how long? It's just, what they're doing is amazing. And the basketball has been really good, too. A lot of fouls, which is to be expected. I think the level of play has been grade A, man. I'm really impressed with the whole operation.
The refs are blowing their whistles a little extra for the 4 months that they had off, because there's been so much stoppage. Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
Facts.
Yeah. What about you, Nick? Anything else stand out to you that you want to discuss?
I'm just gonna touch on what Joe said, man. Kudos to the league, man, for sure. Because I mean, there was a time where we didn't even know if the season was even gonna like return. So I mean, for them to like really set this together. I mean, honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like when I was watching the scrimmage games, I was kind of like looking at it and I was like, dude, I'm like bored as hell. Like watching this, like no fans, like it's just I don't know about it, man. But I mean, once the season actually started, like even though there is no fans, like the atmosphere is still there. Like what I'm saying, like the energy is still there. Guys are still getting up, motivated to play. So yeah, man, kudos to the league, man. I really can't wait for the playoffs to start, man. It's gonna be fun.
Sure.
Yeah, the play has, I think we started off on the right note with those 2 games, New Orleans, Utah, and then the LA battle, 2 games that were sort of back and forth, went down to the wire, and I think the play has not subsided since. Like, there have obviously been some blowout games, stars resting and whatnot, but I think for the most part, there have been a couple of good games every single day that are definitely worth tuning into. A lot of them have gone down to the wire, and it is the biggest testament does have to go to Adam Silver and the league and everybody that worked on the sort of from the medical side to the PR side to bring everything together as well as they have. I don't know if either of you two have gotten the chance to check out any of the player vlogs, but that has been like JaVale McGee and Matisse Thybulle have been doing them. And like that's given a cool sort of behind the scenes like sort of aspect as to what the bubble actually looks like for the players, like from the daily testing and whatnot. I've been having a lot of fun watching those and whatnot. But I agree with everything that you guys have said, and that we are sort of running close to our 30-minute time here, so I'm going to go ahead and close things out. But I do appreciate you both joining me on this podcast here, and I'm hoping that I can get you both back on very, very soon. But why don't we go ahead and let people know where you can find you on social media? Joe, why don't you start us off?
You can find me at Joe Cardoso 301. And then, of course, you can follow Nuts and Bolts Sports at Nuts and Bolts SP on like all social media platforms. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, thanks, Joe. And Nick?
Yes, sir. Follow me on Twitter at _Nick Dormus. Follow my podcast, Above the Rim Podcast, at Above the Rim 19. Man, me and my good friend Bo, we put out a lot of content about basketball, really breaking down the game from different angles. So, yeah, follow me there.
Yeah, you can find my social media right here. Be sure to follow Nuts and Bolts Sports everywhere, our website as well as on all social media platforms. And we'll be back on Monday recapping the weekend in basketball, so tune back then.
Peace.